My name is Jason Collington, and I'm the editor of the Tulsa World and also president of the Tulsa Press Club. The Tulsa World's newsroom has served this community for 118 years, offering local journalism by local journalists, reporting on stories you won't see anywhere else. The Tulsa Press Club is only 117 years old, and its mission is to build an engaged community through the pursuit and support of ethical journalism. A number of our board members are here tonight. The Tulsa Voter Coalition is a partnership among several agencies with a mission to increase voter registration and turnout. They have a lot of work to do. Oklahoma ranks last in the nation on voter turnout. The last time we had an election on city council in our city, 17% of Tulsans voted. 17% of Tulsans voted. We hope this forum changes that tonight. On each election day that we have, and we have several this year, I want to thank the University of Tulsa's Melissa Abdo and President Brad Carson for providing tonight's venue. Before I introduce the journalists from the Tulsa World on stage working tonight, I do want to take a moment and recognize all of the journalists in the audience, from the Tulsa World and the other news organizations that are here tonight. Can we please give them a round of applause? Tulsa, we are lucky. We have journalists from the Tulsa World and the other news organizations that are here tonight dedicated to informing you each day so you know what is happening in our city and in our neighborhoods. Please remember to support them so they can keep serving you. On stage tonight, we have two Tulsa World journalists who will ask the questions. Combined, they have more than 50 years of experience reporting and writing for the Tulsa community. After being a reporter focused on education, youth, and family issues, Ginnie was promoted to the editorial's editor, where she writes columns and edits the opinion pages, op-eds, and everyone's letters to the editor. Kevin Canfield has covered City Hall for the past two mayors for the Tulsa World in his 25-year journalism career. Covering tonight's event is our esteemed Tulsa World staff writer Randy Crable and news reporting intern Louisa Clausen. Staff photographer Daniel Schuler and our photo intern Victor Lopez are documenting tonight's event. The candidates for mayor on stage will be challenged to distinguish themselves from their opponents. The reporters on stage will ask questions, and they can ask follow-ups. As the moderator, I get the fun job to make sure that you actually answer the question. Not that that ever happens. Candidates, when you have 30 seconds left to answer your question, our timekeeper, news intern Bella Casey on the front row, will give you a yellow sign. And when you have 5 seconds, she will give you a red sign. Now, I've been to a couple of these forums, and some people like to go a little long. We will cut you off. I'm not looking at either one of you. So we want to be respectful of everyone's time tonight. We have a lot of important questions to get to because everyone here has an important election coming up on August 27th. Audience, please make sure your phones are silenced, and please remember that we are guests on this campus, and please act accordingly. On cue, thank you. On cue. I appreciate that was staged. That was planned. You're welcome. All right, here we go. Also, I want to make sure that they'll let everyone know your mics should be in place if you want to move them where you want to, but then don't touch them after that so we don't have a bunch of feedback and all that kind of stuff. Let's give each candidate a chance to introduce themselves in 1 minute. We will go in alphabetical order with a different candidate starting each time. We'll start with Casey Bradford.
My name is Casey Bradford. I moved to Tulsa in 2010. I joined the Army shortly after as a Chinese Mandarin cryptolinguist, worked for the National Security Administration, went off to work with Special Forces, left the military after 6 years of active duty and went over to the reserve component. I moved it back to Tulsa to start a business. That was my lifelong dream. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And as I got into the business world, I started realizing that the system wasn't working in my favor. If anything, it was working against me. We hit roadblock after roadblock. And so we kept pursuing it. And now I have, personally, I've got a beautiful wife. She's somewhere in the back, 3 wonderful children. And I'm looking at the educational system of this city. And we're 49th, and that's a travesty. So we're standing before you today, and we're hoping to make a lot of these changes and a lot of these things. But the point of this is I am you. I'm a small business owner. I'm a dad. I drive down Peoria every single day. I know exactly what it's like. Oh, there's my red flag. I'm sorry, guys. We'll keep going in a minute.
Mr. Jolley.
I'm John Jolley, and I'm running for mayor of Tulsa. It's never been my dream to be mayor of Tulsa, but I feel it's a calling. These are scary and troubled times we're in, and it's like us versus them, and you feel a lot of hate, you feel a lot of anger, and it's time for some compassion, some kindness. And during my life, I've voted for both Republicans and Democrats because I'm voting for the human, not the party. And I think the two-party system is basically broken now because it doesn't even try to work together anymore. I know this running for mayor is a nonpartisan, which it should be, because we are here to represent all of Tulsa, not just a certain party or a certain ideology. It's about all of us. Because if we're going to succeed in Tulsa, we've all got to come together. Because it's about our town continuing to grow and prosper, because if you don't grow and prosper, your town withers and dies. You know, I had no idea when I came here.
Okay, time is up. Commissioner Keith.
Sorry.
I'm Karen Keith, and I love Tulsa. And there's never been a more exciting time to be in our city. And I bring a proven track record of public service, experience, and getting the job done. I worked with Mayor LaFortune to pass Vision 2025. We got the BOK Arena, we got downtown housing, and our downtown is no longer dead. I'm really proud of that, and I want to continue the progress that started there. I worked with our federal delegation and our chamber to raise $200 million to rebuild our levees, a project that will save lives and property for years to come. My whole secret sauce is bipartisan cooperation. That's how you get things done. It's not working in a silo or thinking that you have the only answer. You need to reach out, get individuals who are experts in the field and bring them in to help work on problems. And that will include homelessness. Our permitting department needs some improvements. And I plan to tackle that day one. It has to be fixed so that we can get affordable housing out of the ground. Thank you.
Representative Nichols.
Thank you, and thank you all for hosting tonight, and thank everybody for being here. I am State Representative Monroe Nichols, and welcome to House District 72. You currently sit in House District 72, so happy to have everybody in the district. Hey, I've been serving everybody in here, whether you live here or not, in this district or not, in the Oklahoma House for the last 8 years. And I've been very proud of that record of service. But that's not where my service started in Tulsa. My service started in the mayor's office, actually, in 2006, when Kathy Taylor was mayor. My service continued at OU Tulsa as Chief of Staff to the President, working on community health issues. Went on to career tech in the Chamber and co-founded Impact Tulsa. So before I ever got elected, my life was serving this community. And I'm excited about the issues we're going to talk about tonight. And I look forward to serving as your mayor and continuing that record of delivering for people in this community. And I'm very excited to do that this evening. Thank you.
Mr. VanNorman.
Hi, I'm Brent VanNorman. My undergrad was in accounting and computer science, and I worked for a national CPA firm for a total of about 9 years doing system consulting work. I say I had my first midlife crisis, and I went to seminary and ended up planting a church and was a pastor, bivocational for much of that time for nearly 10 years. And then I had my second midlife crisis and went to law school and have practiced law now for about 24 years. In addition to that, I've run 3 different companies, a title insurance company, a impact investing fund, and a software company. And so I've had quite a bit of business experience. The city of Tulsa has over $1 billion budget. There's 3,500 employees. I think the ability that I've had in the past and the opportunities I've had in the past will lend well to serving the people of Tulsa and to help Tulsa go into to the future on a very strong basis.
All right. In this round, each candidate will answer the same question, and they will have 1 minute to respond. Ginnie Graham will start.
What will you do in your first 90 days as mayor? And we will start with John Jolley.
Wow, 90 days. I would try to get to know all the people that are going to be working that I'm going to be working with, because you're only as good as the people that work with you. And, I know the city of Tulsa's got some fine people. I'd also be open to meet with the nonprofits that work with the city of Tulsa that try to do good. One of my big things is the misplaced. And so I would look to what we could do about those misplaced individuals, because the nonprofits are on top of it. I think the mayor that we currently have has been chipping on it. It's a big issue, but I would look at the big issues for me and what we could do and getting to know everybody that works with me.
Karen Keith?
So day one, I'm going to work to rebuild our permitting and inspections department. And you say, why is that a number one priority? Because you cannot build affordable housing and get it out of the ground when you have these lengthy processes at our city hall. I want to make it easier for developers to do the work. We have many who will not do building within the city limits. So it's a domino effect, and it definitely impacts our homeless. I will be working with philanthropy in our community, as well as our firefighters, our law enforcement, because they are boots on the ground with our mental health professionals. So those are just some of the top things that I will be working on, and I'll be leaning on some very talented folks to help me bring all of this work to fruition.
Monroe Nichols.
You know, I started the campaign talking about 4 top-line issues: ending homelessness as we know it by 2030, improving student outcomes, expanding our economy by strengthening our workforce, and making this the safest big city in the country. And so on day one, in the first 90 days, it'll be about making sure I appoint the person who's going to lead the citywide effort to end homelessness as we know it by 2030. That first 90 days will establish the Office of Children, Youth, and Families and our working relationship with schools and youth-serving organizations to make sure we're putting kids on the pathway to success in this community, create the expedited team so we end the backlog on development projects in a 14-day process that can accelerate those projects, and then begin to evaluate city services and make sure that the culture issues that we need to address at the city and our partnership and our relationship with our partners that we're starting to lean into, and change City Hall into an outcomes-focused, accountable organization that delivers on behalf of the people in this community.
Mr. VanNorman.
Well, one of my top priorities for Tulsa is to help the city become much more business-friendly. And so the first goal in that is to actually we have to change some mindsets. And so there's an assessment process I would go through in the first 90 days in which you look at every department, every agency, and you determine just how customer service focused are they, and you're the customer. And so my goal is to assess and to know who are the people that have the ability to treat you like a customer, and so that we can eliminate a lot of the red tape. We can roll out red carpet to you instead of red tape. And in doing that, we will certainly, the permitting process that Karen talked about will be under a microscope, and we will become much more business friendly and much more efficient with business, so that you don't have to feel you're doing the city a favor when you call on us. We're doing you a favor by serving you.
Mr. Bradford.
Terry, we took a 30, 60, 90-day approach in everything, anytime we changed commands. The first 30 days, you enter into that seat, that new seat, platoon sergeant, commander, whatever it might be, and you listen. You start asking the questions of why the systems that are in place, because you might come in with the greatest ideas in the world, but somebody might have tried that 8 years ago and you just didn't know about it. So when we're talking about permitting, I've had those conversations already. And a lot of the things that I assumed would fix these systems, they said absolutely will not, and then they referenced 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 years ago. The next 60 days, we actually work alongside all the employees that are currently there to start taking the necessary steps to make those changes. In the following 30 days, we implement across the board all of those changes from the top down.
This next question will start with Commissioner Keith. How much do you plan to engage with city councilors in setting goals and priorities for the city?
It's absolutely essential that you have relationships with your colleagues. And I will tell you, we have some wonderful folks who have chosen to serve in this position as city councilors. So I will be meeting with them and hope to have individual relationships with all of them, because we can't get anything done at City Hall if we are not working together. And I will spend a lot of time with our city councilors. Like our group right now, I know all of them, and I enjoy working with all of them, and I look forward to meeting the ones who come online here soon. So, yeah.
Monroe Nichols.
For that, there's actually one thing I forgot to mention about the 90-day question, and that is what happened was Brent is to the left of me, and that just confused me. Because I read that article earlier, and I know he's to the left of me. No, I'm just kidding, Brent. But the other thing is making sure that I get the first Director of Tribal Policy and Partnerships appointed that first 90 days. To the question of the city councilors, I think we're all on the same team. I think that's critically important at City Hall. It does not mean that we always agree. I come from an environment at the Capitol. We don't always agree on things, but every once in a while we come together to get things done that we never thought we'd be able to get done. And so it's going to be a great working relationship. Doesn't mean that every vote is 9-0. There's some 5-4s and things like that, but we're going to be on the same team in Tulsa, and I'm going to invest my time and my effort to bring every counselor and get their ideas on the future of the city and make sure that we approach every challenge united, even if it means we have some disagreements along the way.
Brent VanNorman.
Yeah, so one of my favorite books is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so my approach would be, I want to listen, I want to hear, I want to understand where each city council person is coming from, what their agendas are, what the issues are in their districts, and completely get a thorough understanding of that in a collaborative process. Another one of those habits is seek the win-win. Oftentimes in politics, we tend to get so polarized that we think it has to be win-lose, that someone's going to be a winner and someone's going to be a loser. That's laziness. What we have to do is we have to keep working harder, work through the issues, have productive dialogue. It doesn't have to be angry rhetoric. It can be rational conversation. But if you talk about something long enough and you work hard enough at it, you truly can come to a win-win. And I know we can do that.
Casey Bradford.
I believe in smaller government, and I would like to see a lot of our issues being handled at the lowest level possible. The more government officials you get involved in these things, the more time it takes up, the more money is being wasted, and the more energy is spent. I'd like to empower our city councilors to go out into their districts rather than just meeting in the glass tower, on occasion. I want them to be in their districts every single day, and right now it's a part-time job, basically. They don't have a lot of staffers, they don't have a lot of assistants, so the entirety of Tulsa meets in this giant glass building to solve all of our problems. And when you're centralizing this, it creates further problems, backlogs, and issues. So what I would like to do is work with city councilors to get them into their districts, and we just meet on occasion. Give me an update, let me know what you need. I'm here to work for you and for the people, because the best voice of the people is going to come from their city councilors.
John Jolley.
I'm all for meeting and getting to work with the city councilors. They're the people that actually know what's going on in their specific areas. I'm fortunate that in my district right now we're represented by a fine one. She's a friend of mine. I know she is out there trying to find out what's best for Tulsa, what's best for her district. As a mayor, you got to look over everything. So you got to trust those people that are actually representing those people for all the different districts, and to make sure that their voice is being heard. So I'm all for meeting with everyone, I'm hearing what they got to say, and knowing what's important for each one of those districts.
For this next question, we'll start with Monroe Nichols. The city charter allows for 16 mayoral staff. Name at least 3 positions you plan to have in your administration.
That's a great question. So I just mentioned one a second ago, which is the Director of Tribal Policy and Partnerships. Obviously, you'll have a chief of staff, and I plan to appoint a chief administrative officer to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, we change the city hall to a highly accountable organization that's getting outcomes for people, and that's part culture, but it's also part strong leadership. The job of mayor is a big one. It's a big one, and I worked in the mayor's office where we made a significant amount of progress. And those 16 people in the mayor's office are a small part of it, but those 3,500 other employees are a critical part of it as well. And so making sure that we have the people in the office to make sure the building works well. We're also working with our partners. I think those are 3 key positions that I get started with.
Brent VanNorman.
Yeah, so I think one of the things you need to do is the fundamentals well. And so, everyone here complains about roads and potholes and what's going on there. So I think you have to have someone that is essentially going to oversee that area and give great feedback in that area. You've got to do police, fire, the fundamentals well in all of those areas. So obviously you're going to have people that are liaisons with those departments as well. And then I really want to have someone that is hyper-focused on homelessness, and that will be a liaison to the community on that can work with all the various agencies. We have so many agencies right now that are trying to address it, and we need to really bring those folks together and harmonize those so that we can come to meaningful solutions.
Casey Bradford.
So compartmentalization is my favorite thing in the entire world. This is what the military is built upon. This is what small businesses thrive at. I would like, in that note, to take a director over small businesses. 90% of all businesses in the state of Oklahoma are small businesses. We employ 60% of the population across the state of Oklahoma, but we have no representation, we have no liaison, we have no assistants. We just show up to the city and hope that somebody's going to be standing there. So I would like to put somebody in charge to actually assist the small businesses to navigate the network of lack of transparency that exists on the website. In regards to transparency, we need somebody that's in charge of digestible transparency. So that way we're not getting these giant 400-page documents that it's going to take an expert to be able to read. And then a maintenance director, somebody that can actually oversee all the maintenance programs that are happening within the city. So we're not looking at 12 months down the road, we're looking at 5 and 10 years down the road.
John Jolley.
Well, I'm kind of coming from the outside coming in, so that's a little different for me from some of these great people that have already been working in government. But one thing I would do is have a guy or gal underneath me that has been working with city planning for years. And I know a few of those that I have in mind, and they would be my right-hand man on like making recommendations on what's best to make our city grow and what's best to make it easier for our city to grow. You know, Karen's talking about making it easier for housing and everything, because Tulsa's tough on that. I'd have somebody that would work with that. As far as like working with the safety, the police department, fire department, I think you got to be on top of that. You got to have a great working relationship with the chiefs. And then third, I think you got to have somebody like they're talking, a liaison that works with the nonprofits that will help the homeless, because we've got some great nonprofits out there, and I don't know if they're all working together, but it's going to take all of us to attack that, because it's a huge, huge thing that's been going on since the 80s.
Karen Keith.
Yes. So first of all, I have an individual that will be working with me over permitting, and also, you know, looking at bidding processes for the city so that we can, you know, have the best processes in place. We have to compete better with organizations even like ODOT. So we've got to have somebody, and I have that individual who is willing and able to come work with me. On the homeless issue, I plan to lead that, but I will also have an individual working with me to work with the community. There are incredible individuals already working in that space. And then education, I will have a top-notch individual who will be helping make sure that we are doing everything that we can for our public schools.
These next questions were submitted to the Tulsa World. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer. We will start with Brent VanNorman.
This is a question submitted by the University of Tulsa. Explain your vision about higher education in Tulsa. Explain your vision about how higher education in Tulsa should develop and how you'd involve higher education in your administration.
Great question, and that is so critical to the development of business in our area, because businesses coming out in right now are having challenges with finding employees and finding qualified employees. And so we have to feed that pipeline. One of the programs that's already in place that I think is phenomenal and that I want to have a megaphone for is a program called Tulsa Achieves. And that is if you graduate high school in the county, you can go on to Tulsa Community College and get your associate's degree for free. You can also go to Tulsa Tech and obtain that as well. And I think if we start, that's our starting point, and then those are entry points after you get your associate's degree to go on to further education if you so choose, or if you have a valuable trade, then you're able to begin in the workforce. And so that's my focus right now, is really promoting the educational opportunities that are here and that exist and that are great programs.
Mr. Bradford.
So after talking with several businesses that were prospectively looking at moving into Tulsa, one of their chief complaints is we don't have the workforce. And when I asked, we have University of Tulsa, OU, OSU, they're like, we can recruit these guys out of state a lot easier than it would be for us to come in and build the infrastructure in your city. And we need to change that perspective. With the increase in education, we will get better business opportunities here in the city. But that doesn't just go with the colleges. That starts at the baseline. You know, people want to raise their families in a place where that education is going to be beneficial. People want to go to that city where they can walk down the street and feel safe. People want to go to that city where the road infrastructure, you know, I had a lady yesterday and I told her I was going to say this. She said, I need a sports bra and a mouth guard to drive down Peoria. And I was like, ma'am, I couldn't sum that up any better myself. So when we're looking at these colleges, we need to incentivize them. And a lot of times when you get big businesses moving into cities, they provide assistance. They provide resources that can be dedicated to these colleges to continue to grow and build these programs.
Mr. Jolley?
Well, I'm a graduate of the University of Tulsa. My advertising company works with the University of Tulsa and Oral Roberts University both. We've also, of course, got OSU Tulsa and OU represented in Tulsa. We've got a lot of bright minds. I mean, there's no any dummies that are going to school and graduate. So my goal would be any of those people that want to work with the city, get their feet wet and get started in life. And let's use those people to make our city a better place.
Ms. Keith?
So I'm really proud of Tulsa Achieves and TCC. That at the ground level is helping a lot of young people who need to get an education and get them in the door. But what they're also doing, these partnerships between TCC, OSU Tulsa, OU Tulsa, Langston, where they're allowing, and TCC, and of course TU, but they're allowing these degrees that they get from one and classes that they take to morph right into the other institution. That is a huge help. But of course, my long-term goal, I would love to see us have a full-time state university in our community.
Representative Nichols?
Thank you for the question. So, I mentioned in the opening that I was Chief of Staff to the President of OU Tulsa. My mother, who's here, actually works at TCC currently after she retired from Baylor University. And what I've learned about higher education, particularly at OU and TU and all of our universities, they play a much broader role than just educating students. At OU, we were helping cut the life expectancy gap between North Tulsa and the rest of the community. And we see universities play a role in life communities all across the board. I think what we have to do is make sure we can grow our higher ed institutions here by doing some joint investment in infrastructure and those types of things. I'm here because of the University of Tulsa, and there's a lot of folks who could be too, and we're competing with cities that produce more post-secondary degrees than we do. And so making this a center of innovation and excellence is critically important for the city's economic future. And I think we have to partner with our higher ed institutions. As we're spending money in the city to build up our infrastructure, they have to be key partners in doing that so we can grow those numbers in Tulsa.
So this next question will start with Mr. Bradford. So this comes from the City of Tulsa Youth Council, which is a program of Tulsa Changemakers of Leadership Tulsa. So these teenage leaders want to know, what outreach will you make to youth to incorporate their values into the city?
So I have a 13-year-old little boy who is got his own lingo, his own vernacular. He lives in his own world, and it's drastically different than what I grew up with, running around outside and getting sweaty and waiting for somebody to honk a horn so you knew to come home. But I'm very in tune with what he's after, the Fab Labs that exist inside of the city, going there and gaining education and trying things out, being involved in all the different programs that are existing around the city. And I get to watch this perspective. So what I would like to do is expand upon these things. We have the Fab Lab, but I would like to see more of these resources spread out across the city. So it doesn't take your mom and dad who are, probably working that have to drive you there, and you can get the membership and ride your bicycle again. And I would like to offer this across the board.
Mr. Jolley?
I'm a father of an 11-year-old daughter. Became a father pretty late, so it changes your perspective. We lose a lot of our youth that graduate and move on. They don't come back to Tulsa. I hear it all the time. They go off to different colleges. They don't come back. So if we can incorporate the youth of Tulsa now and know what they want, what they need, why they want to stay here, I think that is beyond brilliant, because if they feel that way and they feel needed, they feel wanted, and they're getting served, they're going to stay in Tulsa. And we need the best youth in Tulsa to stay here for us to grow and improve.
Commissioner Keith?
So I think it's imperative that we engage with our young people in this role, encourage them to make City Hall part of their education. Hearing from our young people, it's critical to know what it is they want, and then how can we execute what they want, because everything that we do today is about them and building what they want for the future. And I can't know that unless I'm communicating with these young people. So I would love to have groups that I can work with, and I'm sure that there are individuals and groups like through Leadership Tulsa that I could call in to help with that. So it is critical we listen to our youth.
Monroe Nichols.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, on my website, and as part of the plan to redefine the mayor's role in education, is the creation of an Office of Children, Youth, and Families. And this is so we never lose focus on young people and what they need and getting their input on the decisions we're making at the city. Young people's voices have to be reflected in the decisions that we make, and I think we have to find inroads to do that, which is the reason why that office is so critically important. And I think we know that's not always the case here now. We're not always listening to young people, and we see that in a variety of ways right now. And so I think it's critically important and that we build structures at the city, not that you got to have the mayor's cell phone number to get in touch with the mayor, but there's ways that youth can inform the city on every decision that we make. And so I'm excited about that, and that's been part of our plan in education since we released it, because I think it's so critically important. They're going to inherit this community. We got to make sure this is a community that is worthy of the young people who live in it.
Mr. VanNorman.
Well, kids today probably wouldn't believe that I was young once, but believe it or not, I was. And one of the best experiences I had in high school was being part of junior achievement. And what you do in junior achievement is you actually start a business, and the kids in the form a company, and they elect officers, and they decide what product or service they're going to provide, and it gives them an opportunity to be very creative and to assume responsibility and to learn what it's like. You actually get shares of stock in the company. And so I think having tools like that where we can allow our young folks to fit into those and give them an opportunity to be creative and express themselves and do something that actually is going to give them understanding of what life might be like later and give them a path to do that, and they can use an experience like junior achievement. For me, I got a summer job because of junior achievement. I was loading freight on a truck, but it was still a great opportunity, and I know we can do that.
All right, the next round, we will feature questions tailored specifically to each candidate who have 1 minute to respond. We will start with John Jolley.
Based on your resume, you have not held any public offices or worked in any public agency. With little experience in the public sector, what makes you qualified to run a $1 million municipal government? $1 billion. $1 billion, forgive me, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair question, and it's a great question. And so, why am I running? I was a petroleum engineer for 15 years after graduating from University of Tulsa. I started an advertising company after that I've ran since 1995. Been the sole owner and ran it all these years. I felt what happened during the pandemic. I felt the desperation when all of a sudden you're rolling and in one day and the next day you're in the black and there's total darkness around you. Look, we're all about one financial hardship away from being homeless ourselves, whether it be a medical issue, whether it be a health issue, we could be right there with them. And so the reason I'm running is because during my time on doing this advertising business, I've been walking the streets, and I have met a lot of people, and I've felt the beat of Tulsa, and I want to represent those people and make sure the city continues to grow and gets better and takes care of the people that are trying.
This next question is for Karen Keith.
What would you say to those who would argue that your campaign is more about maintaining the status quo than offering a new vision for the city's future?
Well, I would argue that I have the experience to work with everybody, and I've proven it over the years, over and over again, so that we can continue to move this city forward. And I think our previous mayor has made some great strides. I want to continue those, but there are some things that I would like to also see happen in this community. And those are things I'd like to work on. We need a new convention hotel. We need a new county courthouse. And we need to build these things for our future. And those are some things I'd like to work on. So I don't think it's more of the same. I think I will bring a little different ideas to the community.
The next question is for Monroe Nichols.
As a legislator for 8 years, you got a handful of bills into law. What should voters look at in your voting record to evaluate your effectiveness as a public leader?
It's a great question. I think you should look at the whole record. I have led every day with values at the Capitol, whether that be issues, budget or education or affordable housing or how we treat people, no matter who they love or how they identify or where they're from when they got here. And so I'm proud of that record. So I hope people look at all of it. The great thing about being in the House is everything we do is recorded. You can watch it online. Every bill that I've ever authored is something that you can go research. And I stand by every last vote. I stand by every last bill. And I'm excited about the time in the legislature. And I'm excited to bring that same level of accountability, that same level of standing behind what you do, no matter if it's a bright and sunny day or if it's raining a little bit, to be consistent, because that's what people deserve. They deserve to know where their leaders stand. And I hope people look at the whole record.
All right, the next question is for Brent VanNorman.
You have only lived in Tulsa since 2021. What makes you qualified to run a city in which you've resided for such a short time?
Sure. Well, we've had engagement with Tulsa since 2008. Our son went to ORU in 2008, and so we've been here quite a bit over the years. But what I would say is the Tulsa mayor role is a little unique. If you look at Oklahoma City, there's the mayor and there is the city manager. The mayor cuts ribbons and shows up at things and is a bit more of a figurehead. I don't want to dismiss that too much. But the CEO of the city is the city manager. In contrast, Tulsa does not have a strong city manager. The mayor is the CEO of the city. So if Oklahoma City went out and they were looking for a new city manager, they wouldn't look for someone that had been there for 40 years. They'd do a nationwide search and they'd find the most qualified candidate to come in and run the city. And I think in this situation with the mayor's office, you look at, say, who's run a business before, who's capable of running a city that's $1 billion budget and 3,500 employees. And I think if you looked at that search, you would come up with someone like myself.
All right, the next question is for Casey Bradford.
This is for Mr. Bradford. During the pandemic, you entered into a contract with the Oklahoma Health Department to provide 2 million N95 masks. Only 10,000 arrived, leading to a lawsuit against you by the state that has since been settled. What assurances can you provide voters that similar problems won't arise as you manage city funds?
So there's a whole backstory to this that people don't realize. Chinese Mandarin linguist, NSA, I had contacts around the globe. When nobody could get PPE into this country, I was the only one that could. Partnered with the Cherokee Nation to build the largest N95 and 3-ply surgical mask manufacturing plant in America that is still standing today. Got through customs, got through the nightmare. I was bidding on masks, not against businesses, against countries. This one contract, Mongolia, not only did they buy the masks, they both bought the whole damn plane off the tarmac. This is what was happening. 13 hours ahead, I was fighting tooth and nail to bring anything into this city to keep our businesses open, to keep our schools going. And I got in one bad contract with one guy who promised me, he was a 15-year Department of Defense, National Department of Defense contractor. And he took the money and he ran to Cambodia, and I've been fighting every single day of my own personal funds to pursue this man. And I'm here to tell you that every small business that exists inside of this city, if this happens to you, I will fight for you just like I'm fighting against him.
One more time. Time. Does this work? All right. This is now the lightning round. So we're going to have a little bit of fun now. Everyone gets to play. No question, no answer longer than 15 seconds. We're going to start with John Jolley.
This is easy. What book are you reading?
What book am I reading? I'm reading 2 books right now. I am reading a book by one of my favorite authors, that is Anne Lamott.
There you go. Karen Key.
I'm reading Lukerson's book. It's After the Fire, and it's great insight into what happened in 1921, and there's a thread of the Goodwin family. It's an amazing book, and you really should pick it up.
Monroe.
I'm legitimately, in my 15 seconds, I think I'm only reading briefing books these days, actually.
I'm reading When China Attacks, and it's a book about just what's going on with China and the fact that they plan out for 50 years. We're lucky if we plan out for 2 years, and the strategy they have to actually take over the world.
Mr. Bradford.
Brought it with me. The heinous allegation abuses in youth custody in Tulsa County, Oklahoma. It's an ongoing investigation where our juvenile justice system is under attack by the guards that have been put into those positions.
You read about it in the Tulsa World.
Yes, you can.
Pretty sure. So, go ahead.
We'll start with Commissioner Keith. When you have a day off, where do you hang out in Tulsa?
Well, I like to hang out in the backyard, I have to say. I love my neighborhood. We can walk the neighborhood with the dog, and then we live in Brookside, and so we really enjoy all of the restaurants and things to do right there close to us. I wish it was more walkable and we have more sidewalks, but it's a grand place to be.
Mr. Nichols.
No days off. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. So I have a 16-year-old who is a high school football player, quarterback. He's a pitcher in baseball. So if I have days off, I'm somewhere throwing a football. I'm somewhere throwing a baseball. Typically worn out a lot earlier than he is.
Time.
Oh.
15 seconds. Quick answer.
Oh.
Having fun.
Mr. VanNorman?
Yeah, so we have 3 grandkids in Midtown, so love to spend time with them and the 10 chickens they have in their backyard. And if I'm not doing that, I'm probably out on the golf course.
Mr. Bradford?
I'm usually hanging out with my 3 children. They're 13, 10, and 11 months. The 11 months is keeping me very young, I'll just say that way. I haven't exercised as much in a very long time.
Mr. Jolley?
Well, I would say my daughter, and it's because she is super funny and entertaining. And if she's with mom, I'm hanging out on my porch if anybody stops by to hang out, and anybody can stop by and say hi. So there you go.
Okay, this one we start with, I think we're at Monroe Nichols. Tulsa has had 40 mayors. Among those, who do you most admire?
Kathy Taylor, baby. My old boss.
Okay, Mr. VanNorman.
I'm going with Mayor Inhofe.
Okay.
James Maxwell, 1958.
I would say Mr. Bynum. I think he's been the most progressive mayor since I've been here in 40 years. And if he was running for mayor again, I wouldn't be sitting on this stage. I think he's done a fine job.
I have to say Mayor G.T. Bynum. I think he's done a good job for us, and I think he's been really transparent and gotten us through some pretty rough times during his tenure.
Okay, next question, we start with Mr. VanNorman. Do you plan to keep the newly hired police chief, Dennis Larson?
I would not make a change initially. I would do an evaluation, and I'll do that with anyone and everyone. And we'll have a conversation and determine if he's aligning with the goals for the city of Tulsa. So I would keep him initially and do an assessment.
Mr. Bradford?
I would do an assessment.
Okay. Mr. Jolley?
The answer is yes. He has been here a long time. He's been working for 40 years. I don't think there's going to be anybody that knows Tulsa better than Chief Larson. He's paid his dues. He's earned his job.
Time.
Yeah, just a reminder, this is still the...
Still short answer.
Yeah. Commissioner Keith?
So yes, I would keep Dennis Larson. I do know him well, and I think we'll work well together, and I'm not sure how long Dennis wants to stay, but I think as long as he does, he works well with everybody.
Time.
Representative Nichols?
Coming with my timer this time. Yeah, I think initially absolutely would keep them on, evaluate what the goals of the department, make sure we're hitting those outcomes, but certainly keep them on. Want stability in the department.
Okay, this is a pretty light question, so we're starting with you, Mr. Bradford. Of all the characters in the Tulsa Base, Outsiders, book and movie, who's your favorite character?
All right, so this is going to be horrible. I've been to the museum. I've seen it.
You have to pass, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going. Yep.
That's okay.
All right, Mr. Jolley?
I'm going to go soda pop.
Soda pop.
Soda pop. All right, Ms. Keith.
The musical's great. You've got to go see it. As far as giving you one specific character, phew, it's gone. But I love the musical. And Danny O'Connor, if he was my outsider, he's the best insider we have here in Tulsa.
Mr. Nichols?
So I cannot remember Rob Lowe's character.
Soda pop.
Soda Pop. There. Oh, did he? Yeah,
Yeah.
that. And it's because I know Rob Lowe from West Wing, so he's my favorite character and everything. But Soda Pop.
There you go. I concur with Rob.
Okay, and I'm going to need a little help here too. It's the guy that played the Karate Kid.
Ralph Macchio.
Oh, Ralph Macchio.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, next question. We'll start with Mr. Jolley. If elected, do you plan to run for another term after that?
Yes, if elected and the people like me, and I think I've done a great job, absolutely.
Commissioner Keith.
Yeah. So I will look at it, and certainly if everybody wants me to continue to serve, I would look at it. There's a lot I want to get done in the next 4 years, so we'll see what happens.
Representative Nichols.
That would certainly be my intention. We put out a plan to end homelessness, we know, by 2030. I'm going to see it through.
Mr. VanNorman.
Yes, I'd definitely be open to serving another 4 years after the initial one. Absolutely.
Okay, that was a yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Bradford.
Same thing. A lot of these things that we're facing today aren't going to be solved in 4 years. We're going to put things in process and in plans in place so that way we can make the necessary steps, and I'd like to see them to completion.
Okay. I think Commissioner Keith is up for this one. So this will be the last one for this round. Tulsa used to be known as the oil capital of the world. What capital do you want Tulsa to become next?
We are becoming the tech hub of the world. We've got drones flying everywhere. I think there's going to be so many opportunities for our young people through all the technology that's coming out of this university, through OSU, Tulsa. So lots to look forward to. Tech hub.
Representative Nichols.
And we're already there on the tech hub. What I'm really excited about is making this is the largest city in the country that's all Indian reservation. This is going to be the center of Native culture and the gateway to Indian country.
Mr. VanNorman.
Well, they say Disney World is the happiest place on earth, and I would like Tulsa to become the business-friendliest place on earth.
Okay. Mr. Bradford.
I'm with VanNorman on this. I think we need to make this the entrepreneurial and business capital of the country.
Mr. Jolley.
I was a part of that petroleum industry that is no longer here, and that's why I've been doing advertising. So I'm going to go with I'm very fired up about the technical hub. I also think we could be a giant distribution center based because we're in the center of the country, and we've got land by the airport, and we should use that to grow that and connect everybody.
All right. In this next round, everyone now has 1 minute to respond. We're starting with Monroe Nichols.
What specific policies or programs would you implement or expand to end or at least curb the city's homelessness?
Good. Thanks for the question. I think I'm the only person on the stage who's put out a whole plan to end homelessness as we know it by 2030. It starts with the appointment of somebody in the mayor's office to lead the citywide effort. It continues with our investment in outreach workers to double down there, the investment in a data system so we can make sure that we're serving people well, addressing our affordable housing crisis that we have by creating 2,000 more units every year, and getting our name off the list out of the top 20 in evictions. And those are things that are going to be the priorities. They've been the priorities since the start of the campaign. That's how we're going to end homelessness as we know it by 2030, and we're ready to go.
Mr. VanNorman.
Mr. VanNorman?
Well, there is not a one-size-fits-all to resolve homelessness, but I will say this. Homelessness is not primarily a housing issue. It's primarily a drug addiction issue and a mental health issue. And we have to address those for a small percentage of the population. It is a housing issue. If you lost a job, if you had a medical issue, it could be that. Those are the easy fixes. The more difficult ones are dealing with the drug addiction and the mental illness. I would suggest that a organization like John 3:16 Mission is doing a fabulous job of addressing the whole person. They address the physical, they address the psychological and mental, they address the spiritual. They have a 150-acre farm that they actually put people to work, and they are transparent, and they will let you know how many people they've taken that were homeless into productive members of society.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford.
So Mayor Bynum put Mark Smith as the CEO of Tulsa Housing Solutions. He formerly was in Houston, and he made a significant strides down in Houston by bringing all the systems together. And right now we have a very divided structure in which a lot of resources that are here don't have access to this system. And we need to incorporate all of these systems in unison in order to start making these steps forward. And the only way to do that is by appointing individuals like Mark Smith, going out into the community to bring these individuals in here, so that way we can collectively grab every single unit and make them move forward.
Mr. Jolley?
This is very important to me. It's not a quick fix. This has been going on since the 80s when the federal government put the people on the streets. It's gotten worse over time. I saw my dad as a kid when we were poor. He gave his shirt off his back to a guy we found in the weeds next door. My daughter, early on, we're driving, seeing homeless people on the street. She goes, Dad, if we could do anything, if I could get anything for Christmas, I would like to give to all the homeless people an umbrella, a sleeping bag, and a tent. I go, I don't think we can afford that right now, but we've got to address the homeless people. And because here's the deal, they're misplaced. And if you don't have, you've got to work with them. They got to believe in themselves. Because if people do not have any belief in themselves, they're never going to get better. They got to believe.
Commissioner Keith?
There are a lot of entities working in the community right now, and they do have a cohesive working group. So I want to work directly with them, with an individual in my office who knows how to work with affordable housing and get all of the grants that we can get to help get more housing. I love what these tiny home villages are doing. They work. Brad Johnson is doing one out west, and this creates a community. People that live behind the levee that I know and people that I've met in the point in time count, they have community, so we have to help create community for them. You can't just stick them in a hotel because they're not going to stay. These tiny home villages, there'll be 60 units, and they can stay there for the rest of their lives. So when people say, I don't want to live next to somebody who's homeless, they're no longer homeless. They're in a home. So I'd like to see more of that because they will actually work.
Okay, so this next one, I admit, it's a two-part question, but I know you are all capable of answering it in a minute. So anyway, and we're starting with Mr. VanNorman. Anyway. Okay, so the first part is the question, has State Superintendent Ryan Walters treated Tulsa Public Schools fairly? And then the second part is name two things you can do as mayor to support Tulsa Public Schools.
Okay, great question. And I'm going to answer it, and people aren't going to like the answer, but I think he had to come in when he did. And believe it or not, I was just at a conference in which he and Dr. Ebony Johnson were on the same stage. They are working together wonderfully. We just saw the increase scores today that was in the Tulsa World reported, 5% increase in scores. And so I think they're working effectively together. I'm very impressed with Dr. Ebony Johnson. I think she is turning things around. Her heart is in the right place. I want to do everything I can. I would love to, if someone said you could have a role on the school board, I'd love to have a role, even if it's advisory only, and to be able to come up alongside and be an encourager and be a cheerleader and just ask what we as a city can do to continue to encourage her in the good work she's doing.
Mr. Bradford?
So out of all the cities in Oklahoma, Tulsa is the most unique, but yet we're still strapped against the state legislative branch and what they're going to pass down for our educational purposes. I think that Tulsa needs to take a more proactive role in our education, and we need to start finding a way to distance ourselves from the state in its entirety. We're changing too fast, we're diversifying too fast, we have too many groups in the city, and that we cannot wait for legislation 2, 3, 5, 7 years down the road to actually happen, and that's why we're seeing our literacy rates fail. You know, if I get elected as mayor of Tulsa, we will start taking the necessary steps to make Tulsa the best city, not only in the state, but it'll become the standard for the rest of the country. And the only way to do that is by taking control of the education, because those leaders, those kids are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And right now, the literacy rates, I'm terrified of what's going to happen.
I just want to follow up. The first part is, do you think that Ryan Walters has treated Tulsa Public Schools fairly?
I think that Tulsa needs to take a more proactive role in our school systems, and that
That's
Ryan Walters, all right, no, I don't. I don't think he has.
Okay.
I don't. I think
Okay.
Tulsa's been actively working. We have free breakfast, free lunch. Tulsa's been actively working.
And I wanted to follow up with Mr. VanNorman because I wanted a direct answer. Did State Superintendent Ryan Walters treat Tulsa Public Schools fairly?
Yes, I believe he did, and I think
Okay.
he needed to do it at the time.
Okay.
And I think we've seen good results as a
Okay.
result of that.
That's fine. That's fine. We got
All
to
right,
keep on
thank
track.
you.
So, Mr. Jolley.
Okay, would you, after all that, would you repeat the question
Yes.
one time?
First part. Has Superintendent Ryan Walters treated Tulsa Public Schools fairly, and name 2 things you can do as mayor to support Tulsa Public Schools.
I'm going to say absolutely not. I think it's been some Gestapo tactics. I think this whole one testing thing, this pressurized testing, yes, Tulsa's improved. That's great. I'm proud of them. But my daughter goes to Tulsa Public Schools. And I feel the pressure that these teachers are under, that the administrators of Tulsa are under, and I feel the pressure the kids are under. Look, all kids are different, and we're not addressing all these differences for kids. It's not this one size is all size. So we've got to address the differences for kids. We've got to teach the kids and not just rely on testing. And we've just got to support Dr. Ebony Johnson. And as mayor, I'm going to do everything I can to support Tulsa Public Schools because it's my #1 thing about this running for mayor.
And I want to clarify, Ebony Johnson's not running for mayor, so I think you kind of got your...
What's that?
Ebony Johnson's not running for mayor.
No,
so
but I'm going to support her as mayor. Yeah.
Okay, as mayor, okay.
We both got John in her name, so I'm all for it, you know.
Commissioner Keith.
Not a big fan of Ryan Walters. I refer to him as Voldemort, but I will tell you, I've been so impressed with Dr. Ebony Johnson and the way she has handled him. I think she calls him every day to check in, and she has moved the needle on academics. So what can we do as a city to help her? Well, one thing would be to work with philanthropy, and the city has funds to do this as well, and help our teachers get into housing. You can use it for both retention and recruitment, so that if they stay for 5 years, then guess what? They don't have to pay it back. You take care of that down payment. So as a city, I think we need to do everything that we can. And I've been told by some administrators that if you will just show up when our teachers come in, tell them how great they are. Be their best cheerleader. I want to be that for them and do any and everything I can to make sure that our education is the best it can be here in Tulsa.
Representative Nichols.
Yeah, the answer is no, and it's been no for a long time, because when Ryan Walters attacked our school district, I'm the only person on the stage who said anything about it. When Ryan Walters wanted to force teachers to teach about the Bible in the school, regardless if they were qualified to do it, I'm the only person on the stage who said anything about it. And I've done that every single time something like that has happened since he's attacked our school district. I'm also the only person on the stage who's articulated a way in which we can support schools. I've talked about the Office of Children and Families. I've talked about the Teaching Tulsa Fund, which invests in teachers who are getting growth out of students in classrooms where it's tough to do it, to make sure they stay in the classroom and they can afford to do so. And lastly, the reason why I care so much about homelessness, 900 TPS kids are homeless today. 1,200 are in families facing eviction. As mayor, I'm gonna hold myself accountable for the literacy rates that are low because those kids don't have a place to stay. And I'm going to make sure that as mayor, we're going to make sure they're ready to go to school and they're happy, fed, and well ready to go.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Bradford. The police department is about 140 officers short. What are your plans to bring the force up to full staff?
So TPD is drastically short, and we're seeing this across the city when we're making these phone calls to deal with the homelessness population or the rising crime rates. The last Command Climate survey that came out was at an all-time low, and I have a sneaking suspicion that the next Command Climate survey that comes out is also going to be at an all-time low. If you don't have confidence in your leaders and you don't appreciate what they're doing, I mean, Chief Larson went in there and his first day on the job, he made a horrible decision. And it backfired. And GT Bynum stood up and actually fixed it. So he started his term literally having to get his decision overruled. And I'm watching these police officers. I deal with them every single week. And now they're disheartened about the current situation with the new police chief. And we can't retain police officers if they're not happy with the way that their boss is treating them.
Thank you. Mr. Jolley?
I'm going to say I would meet with Chief Larson and to get his ideas on what he thinks is the best way to get new officers, approach that. And if we have to go outside of the city, which I think we probably would, that there's some other great officers across the country that may be disillusioned where they are. We recruit them to come to Tulsa because we've got a great Tulsa to live in. The police officers have a pretty good salary to live in Tulsa. And I think we could get some fine officers to be a part of Tulsa, because once you visit Tulsa, it's a beautiful city, and there's some great people, and I think we should get some police officers that will picture that and come here for that.
Commissioner Keith.
So I think there are a number of cities that are not as appreciative of their police officers as we are, and I think that some of those communities would be ripe for recruitment. And I think if you look at our rates of being able to solve crimes, we have one of the best departments in the city. And we have the real-time information center, that we have some great technology that is assisting our police department. I think that's going to be a nice recruitment tool. Getting them into the new housing that for the department, that is also going to be a recruitment tool. And I'm very proud to have the Fraternal Order of Police's endorsement. And I intend to work closely with them because they are boots on the ground and they will help me stay informed with issues. And I know they have concerns already, and they will let me know. They will keep me informed.
Representative Nichols.
Yeah, so I actually, just this last legislative session, co-authored Senate Bill 102, which increased the retirement benefits for police officers, because number one is making sure we retain folks who are there so they stay a little bit longer because they're trained and they know what they're doing. And then make sure the department's a place where you want to work. I think that's always the thing we can't forget, is to make sure that the work environment is as good as possible. Also make sure police officers aren't responding to calls they shouldn't be responding to. And so the alternative response team, making sure that we fully invest there, so we take that out of the hands of police officers who would also agree that's not really something they should be doing. And then I think lastly is putting public safety back into the hands of people in the community. How are we doing the prevention? What are we doing after school programs? How are we intervening with people who have been caught up in the court system? And how are we helping people re-enter into this community when they come back from serving a term? And I think that's the way that you improve public safety. So if we retain and recruit, but we also have to make sure officers are doing police work, and finally make sure that we have our community responses to public safety.
Mr. VanNorman.
Well, this isn't a new phenomenon. We've been short police officers for quite a while, and I've already been working with a group that is going out to recruit from places that are defunding the police and say, move to Tulsa, we will defend the police. The second thing I think we need to look at is the police academies right now are just, they can't fill them up. They can't get enough. And one of the things we have to look at, Insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting different results. We've got to change something, and one of the things we need to look at is the 4-year degree requirement. It's great if you can fill up the police force with 4-year degree candidates, but if you can't, then I think we need to look at things like military service is counting toward that. Look at experience in another police department. Right now, if you want to transfer here and you've got 20 years of experience, but you don't have a 4-year degree, you've got to get the 4-year degree plus go through the full police academy. No one's going to come in based on that, and so I think we need to alter that. And last, if it still isn't full, we look for associate's degrees that we then give them the opportunity to come and get their bachelor's degrees.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are right at time, and I want to thank you all for participating. This is going to be the last question from us. So again, thank you all for running. This is how democracy works. Tulsa has lost out on some new businesses going to other cities. What is Tulsa not offering that would help attract transformative companies? We're going to start with Mr. Jolley.
Wow. Well, I think we have to change the mindset of Oklahoma and Tulsa being a city in Oklahoma. There's so many people I know that, they don't even think about locating Oklahoma because of our political system right now. There's a lot of anger in Oklahoma. We've got to become a more kind and compassionate place. And we've also got to have the kids you're only as strong as your public school system. And if our school system is strong, we're going to get people to come here. And that's the key. They've got to know that their kids are going to get educated. And when they come here, they will get an education, become a part of Tulsa.
Commissioner Keith?
So we need to tell our story. Tulsa is a fantastic place to live. We have incredible parks. We have amazing neighborhoods. And really, when people do come here, they want to stay. The Corps of Engineers is the best example. These guys, they only come here for 3 years and then they leave. But the last 4 have come back and stayed. They've had to go on other assignments. They've kept their home and then they come back here. So Tulsa has a great story to tell. We must make sure that people know that we do have good education in our community. Yes, there are things we can do better, but we have good education in Tulsa, and we're not telling our story the best way that we can. So as a mayor, I want to work hand in hand with the recruitment for these businesses to come to our community, because we have an amazing place and we should all celebrate it. And when we celebrate it, other people feel that.
Representative Nichols?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I talk about expanding our economy by strengthening our workforce, and I think that's a big part of it. We talked about schools up here. I think that's critically important. I also think about when we're telling our story, when people see us across the country, it's going to be really important that they see the story that we're telling them. We were once the oil capital of the world. We were the center of black wealth at one time. We are 100% Indian reservation. We are home to a lot of first-generation Americans, and we have to marshal all of that and tell our story in ways in which we just don't tell it. And I think that's going to be critically important, because we are fighting against the perception in Oklahoma. And I guarantee you, we can do something big this year in this mayor's race. We can make history in this mayor's race, and that does put us on the map. It does get us going forward, and it does say that we are a community that's ready to do things a little bit differently than we have before. Because we've been up here this whole time, and one thing we know is that the old way of doing things, the old way of moving the community forward, just doesn't work for the future, and Tulsa has to be focused on the future.
Mr. VanNorman? Mr. VanNorman?
Well, I would hope everyone in this room agrees that Tulsa's a great place to live, and you're glad you're here. We need to do a better job of marketing that and putting that together and doing road shows and going out to, first of all, get the attention of these companies that we'd like to attract. The second thing we need to do then is, it's back to the 7 habits of highly effective people. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Understand what those companies are looking for, and then be willing to negotiate over that, be willing to compromise some over that. But the other thing I think that business will appreciate is, if I'm mayor of Tulsa, they know there's a business person that's leading Tulsa, and they'll want to come here because they know I know how to treat a business.
Mr. Bradford?
So I have a unique perspective on this. A lot of times when these businesses come to Tulsa to tour Tulsa and check things out, they usually find themselves in one of my establishments towards the end of the night, whether it's a dueling piano bar or a Latin dance club or something like that, and I take the time to actually talk with them. And more often times than not, I'm like, oh, so you guys gonna actually move here? And they're like, no, you were just an incentive for the other city so we can get a tax write-off. And I ask them, why is that? And they're like, well, you're 49th in education, your roads are absolutely terrible, you're top 10 in the highest crime rates, your homelessness is ridiculous. More often times than not, they're like, we'll be driving around the IDL and we'll see somebody defecating on the street. And they're like, that's not where my employees won't move here. So we need to take an innovative and proactive approach on how to fix these things. I said James Maxwell, 1958, youngest mayor to ever exist in Tulsa. He got us through the civil rights movement. This guy was absolutely incredible. Established the Civic Center, the interdispersal loop, and he did it by innovation. He did it by taking proactive approaches on absolutely everything. And that's what we need now.
Okay. Mr. Jolley?
Oh, did I not start on
Or
this
do we
one?
start? Oh, we're
Okay,
done.
we are,
We'll just do it again, you know.
all right.
Sorry about that.
We are to closing remarks. We will hear a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate, and we will start with Karen Keith.
All right, there has never been a better time to live here in Tulsa, and I am the only candidate sitting up here who has had experience with both the city and the county, and I have brought millions of dollars to this community. You all know that I've done work on the levees. I have worked to create a new family justice center for us, and I love this city, and I feel like we built a fantastic facility, and I'm very proud of it. And I've also worked to make sure that our downtown has what it needs to move forward. And I want to see what happens next. We need a new convention hotel. I can work on that. And we have a lot. I hate when people denigrate and say, you know, our city isn't what it should be. But we have a great city. And yes, we have problems, but we can fix those if we work together. And if you bring the right people to the table to work with you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I want to start by saying thank you, everyone for listening. This has been a great opportunity to visit. Experience is important. I have 8 years of legislative experience. I have a whole career serving this community before that. I serve right now even outside of the legislature, an organization called Strive Together. I'm the only person on this stage that's offered up a clear pathway for dealing with the issues that we have. And about those issues didn't start yesterday. There's something to be said about experiences just being in a place for a very, very long time. Experience is about outcomes. And if you think and you center this need to end homelessness, improve student outcomes, strengthen our economy, and make this the safest big city in the country, you ask yourself, for those who have been serving in local office for a very, very long time, have they proven the ability to do that? It is time to move this community forward, and I am ready to serve as your mayor to do just that.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here as well, even those that booed me on the Ryan Walters answer. It's okay. And that's my approach to working with people, is let's give people the opportunity to express themselves. Let's hear from everyone, and then let's move forward and seek the win-win. And I've had the opportunity to work in a business with my sister-in-law and my son, and if you don't believe family dynamics come into play in a situation like that, you have to be ready to and willing to listen. You have to be willing to work with people, but you also have to be willing to challenge people. And so after you've listened and after you've heard, then you have to have a clear path forward. And so I want to challenge the city of Tulsa. I want to challenge those that work for the city to strive high, to reach for the stars. It sounds lofty and whatnot, but if you don't set big goals, you never accomplish anything. So let's set some big goals. Let's get together. Let's work toward those goals. Let's make it happen. And Tulsa's brightest days are ahead.
Mr. Bradford.
So we talk about a lot of the issues that are surrounding this absolutely phenomenal city. I moved here. I love this place. I'm raising my family here. I chose here. But what we're not talking about is the core fundamental issues that are existing inside of the city. And we've let these things sit and fester for so long. And these aren't pretty things that we get to talk about up on stage because everybody will be snoozing by, within 3 minutes. But what I'm bringing is a unique form of leadership to this city. There's not a single candidate on the stage that knows how to run the city. But what we do need to do is find a way to delegate responsibility. And I'm going to say this one more time. Delegate responsibility so we don't end up with the crisis that just happened to the juvenile justice system. So that we don't get into this homelessness situation. We need to find ways to not put this burden on one individual, but actually pick Tulsans to stand together and say, this is how we're going to address and fix these issues. And it doesn't just come from one mayor, it comes from the entire city.
All right. That concludes tonight's candidate forum. Oh, it does not conclude tonight's candidate forum.
Yeah, first I gotta go
Sorry about
twice, now I don't go at all, man.
Sorry.
All right, you ready?
Go.
All right. Time lady, you ready? Okay. You know, my first presidential vote was in 1980. I was a midshipman at the U.S. Naval Academy. My vote was for Jimmy Carter. I might have been one of the few guys at the Naval Academy that voted for Jimmy Carter. In fact, I was one of the few guys in America that might have voted for Jimmy Carter because he lost in a landslide to a man named Ronald Reagan. But to this day, that vote for Jimmy Carter is my most prized vote and my most honored vote because Jimmy Carter stood for honor, he stood for integrity, he stood for compassion, kindness, and decency. If I'm elected mayor, that's what I want to do. I want to be Jimmy Carter. And I'm going to tell you one last thing here before my time's up. We're all 5 running for mayor. You might not vote for me. You might vote for me. Great. I just want you all to go out and vote because that's what... Because people have made sacrifices for that very privilege as American, and it is our job to make those sacrifices heard. Vote.
Time. All right, we want to thank everyone. This is the end. This is actually the end of the candidate forum. We want to thank the University of Tulsa, the 2 Tulsa World journalists on stage for their work, the Tulsa Press Club, and the Tulsa Voter Coalition. Good night, and please subscribe and follow local journalism by local journalists. Good night.